Hey, everybody! Woo! Let me tell you, my name is Keith Ellison, and it is getting hot in here. Let me hear you noise. So, look, welcome to the kickoff of Resistance Summer. This is an intensive engagement. That's right. That's worth an applause, isn't it? You know, this is an intensive engagement that the Democratic Party is going to be doing with all of our progressive allies. We are reaching out to our neighbors, our friends. We're going to the VFW hall, the church basement. We're knocking doors. We're doing phone banks. We're talking to our people. And if you really want to be effective, you got to listen and go to those doors. We're making house calls, and that's what Resistance Summer is all about. And I just want to let folks know that you can get involved today right here with Resistance Summer if you go to your phones and text RESIST to 43367. Type RESIST to 43367. Who's gonna text that number to us, you guys? Yeah. We got to keep in touch with everybody all over the country so that we can talk to our neighbors. Resist 43367. And so it's important for you to know, and I'm so excited, Peggy. How about this news? We're holding 100 events across the country in 50 different states and the District of Columbia. Yeah. As part of Resistance launch today. And we've never done anything quite like this before. This is kind of new for the DNC, but you know what? It's a good start, isn't it? Yeah. And I just want to tell you, look, Resistance Summer is not a one and done. It's the first step. You got it? Yeah. Now keep this to yourselves. I don't want anybody to, you got it? Can we keep a secret here? We might have to come up with something like, I don't know, Democracy Fall or something, who knows? But we are on the march. We are talking to our neighbors. We are engaging all over this country. And today, to talk about all these great events that we're having and to have our Resistance Summer launch, I got three awesome friends of mine. Let me start from my right, your left, my good friend, Representative Fu Lee. Give it up for Fu Lee, everybody. Thank you. And I also want you to meet a dynamic young leader. Her name is Representative Erin, Maye, Quade. There you go.
Thank you.
Also, former school board member in Minneapolis, current state legislator in St. Louis Park, Peggy Flanagan. That's right. So as I said, Resistance Summer is all about that intensive engagement. Mark your calendars right now for our capstone event, which is going to be at Labor Day. On Labor Day, we want you to call ahead and set up your picnic area, your cookout area now so that we're going to have this intensive engagement all through the summer, and we're going to have a capstone celebration because we will have been engaged in democracy, talking to all of our neighbors all summer long. But we're going to have regular calls, checking in, how many new registrations all over the country. What are the stories? We want the statistics, but you know what else we need, Niles? We need stories, man. Right. We need people to tell with the story. Why are you out here in Resistance Summer? What makes you get out and give up your day to knock doors and talk to your neighbors? We want stories all over the country. We want to hear from you because guess what? All of us want to be able to go to the doctor. We believe health care should be a right. Isn't that right? And yet we know the guy sitting in the Oval Office is a threat to that, right? We believe, who believes in public education for all, right? And yet we know there's somebody right up there that he appointed who doesn't even like the concept of public education. And who believes we should have an environment and a climate that we can actually live in? You know? And not only did he appoint an EPA director that is against climate change and against climate action, he actually pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, which is an offense to not only every living thing, but the international community. But guess what? People at the local level are saying, well, if you won't step up to your responsibility, local communities will, right? So we're on the move this summer. We're moving out strong. Resistance Summer is nationwide. In fact, it's worldwide because, fool, you know who I forgot to mention? We got an awesome group of Democrats called Democrats Abroad. They're literally Literally millions of Americans live overseas, but they are proud Democrats, and they are voting, and they make the difference in a whole lot of elections. And so let me go straight to telling you about my friends. I kind of already hit it a little bit, but Fuli is a very interesting guy for many reasons, one of which is that he actually is a refugee to this great nation of ours. He has a pretty important story to tell. And Fu, why don't you give us a word on that?
Thank you. So, Representative Fu Lee, my family, we came from a refugee camp in Thailand. I was born in 1991. We were there for less than a year before we came over. But the struggle that we face are similar to some of the refugees that are going through some of the experiences that they're going through today. And I remember one story that my dad told me that just 30 years ago, I don't know if he could even imagine it today, where crossing the Mekong River from Laos into Thailand to get to the refugee camp, and once they got there, it was just him. My stepmom was shot on the river bank in Laos, so it was him and 3 kids. And when they got into the refugee camp, two of my siblings were back home with my aunt and uncle, and one of my older sister, who was the baby at that time, she was at one of the refugee hospital. And at that time, there wasn't anyone cooking or feeding my siblings at home. And when my dad was at the hospital looking at my older sister, where her bowel was filled with blood, she was puking, she was throwing up. I remember my dad saying that, that was probably the hardest moment of his life, where he did not have a partner to look after the kids back home. And now at the hospital, they don't have anything to eat. And then just looking at, I still remember my dad telling the story of my older sister, just because of her sickness, her stomach was like so bloated that he did not know if she was going to survive. And when you think about that, that was only 30 years ago for my family. And today, with all of the anti-immigrant sentiment that's going throughout the country because of the guy that we have in the Oval Office, I think that both Democrats and Republicans really need to come together to not go or buy in with this anti-immigrant sentiment. And we really need to appreciate and stand in solidarity with everyone. And here in the state of Minnesota, we cannot stop until we have equality for everyone.
Fuli, everybody. Now, Peggy, you hail from the Ojibwe people, indigenous to the Midwest, and you're a proud Native woman who has been working on Native vote and as well as the rights of all Americans. Talk about how important it is for us to not forget our indigenous communities.
Sure. Thank you for that. I'm really excited to be here with 3 of my favorite human beings, so thank you. Bonjour, Peggy Flanagan, Indigenous Cause, Guabagani, Gadikagdan, Dunjaba, Mangan, and Dodame. My name is Peggy Flanagan. I'm a citizen of the White Earth Nation of Ojibwe, which is the largest tribe in Minnesota and the best-looking tribe in Minnesota. And my family is the Wolf Clan, and the role of the Wolf Clan is to ensure that we're not ever leaving anyone behind. And I think that is part of why I do this work, and I think why y'all do this work too. And at the core of Native engagement and the Native vote, I think it's how we serve our community. Growing up, my mom took me with her every time we voted, right? She'd hoist me up on her hip, and I'd watch as she'd fill in the bubble, and that was just part of who we were and our identity. And so it's really important to me that my daughter, who's also Ojibwe, sees that as part of our values, of who we are. Recently when we saw all of the horror that happened at Standing Rock, and we saw, bear spray being used, and elders, little old ladies, being beaten by deputies simply for standing up for the right to clean water, as well as ensuring that their ancestors, the bodies of their ancestors, were not desecrated, which I think any of us, frankly, would stand up for that. And we saw, President Obama came around and really stood with Native people, and now that same orange guy, right, in the Oval Office, as he is attacking immigrants and undocumented folks, he's also attacking Native people and has cut the budget. His new proposed budget does incredible damage to Indian country. And so for me, as a Native woman, as one of 4 Native women in the Minnesota House, feel a real responsibility to ensure that our resistance looks like reminding people all the time, 1, we're still here, we still exist as contemporary people, and 2, there are particular laws and rights that we have inherently as Indian people, and that those are non-negotiable. So that's, I think, one of the things that we need to remember. Native people are still here. Here in Minnesota, we're on Dakota land, right now in this moment, and it's something that we need to remember if we're going to be able to move forward and craft policies that are good for everybody.
All right. And Erin, you kind of represent everybody in this room because your mother's white, your father's black, your wife is here with you. Where is she at?
I think she went to go get some
water. Oh, she went to go somewhere.
Warm in here.
But you're like, my mom would say, you're like a gumbo, right? All of yourself.
Intersectionality. Thank you, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw.
But you and I used to work together.
We did.
Yeah, we were organizing on the campaign trail. Actually, we all did. Actually,
yeah.
But you were at my congressional office when you decided to jump into this thing. Tell me what motivated you.
The man to my left. So my name is Erin Maye Quade. I'm a representative from Apple Valley. It's a suburb of St. Paul in Minnesota. And like he said, I'm biracial. My dad is black. My mom is white. I'm also lesbian, queer, gay. Fit into all of those. And I'm a young woman, right? I represent the suburbs. Millennial, thank you. And I was the only person to flip a seat from red to blue this year. And I did all of that. Yeah, it's a big deal. But the reason that I decided to run in the first place, I went with Congressman Ellison to a visit to the Sheridan Story, which puts meals in backpacks of kids on Friday who face the weekend hunger gap between Friday and Monday when they don't have access to food at school. And I was filling in for Sarah, actually, so it wasn't my area. So I was sitting back and I was looking at the map on the wall of the areas that they served, and I was like, oh, okay, yep, North Minneapolis, got it, Eastside St. Paul, sure. And then I just saw this word Greenleaf. And that was my elementary school. It's where I went to school. And I didn't know that childhood hunger was so extreme in my community, in my own community, that they were putting meals in backpacks. And then I looked over, and my middle school was on there too, and my high school was on there, but it had a different color pin. And I interrupted that presentation to say, what do the white pins mean? And they said, it's a planned expansion. We're planning on hunger being so bad in that school that we will be going into that school next year.
Erin, do you remember when we asked, why do you put food in these backpacks for the weekend? What made you feel that this is something your program should do? You remember what the guy told us?
No, what did he say?
He told us because kids were stealing little yogurt cups or whatever, and then when they got caught, they'd say, "Well, we don't have any food."
They were hoarding food.
They were hoarding food,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, "Well, I have to have some food for my brother." Mm-hmm. So.
And yes, and you're absolutely right. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this is not in the inner city. This
Right.
is in the suburbs.
This is in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
A city that doesn't pay LGA. That's how much wealth there is in my community. But there's also a 380% increase in childhood hunger since I graduated from high school. And I had not heard a single person talk about it. And so Keith and I are driving back to his office, and I'm just like so upset. I'm not even asking him about his next event. I'm not even giving him the talking point. I'm just like, and he said, when are you going to run for office?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, what are you waiting for? And I had no answer. And I've learned very well that don't ever not have an answer for a question that Keith asks you. But the truth was, what was I waiting for? Was it more passion for people and policy? No. Was it more education? No. Was it more love for my community? No. And so I went home and was like, hey, hon, I love you. How much do you love me? Because I think I'm going to run for office. And she was like, yes. And that's how this all got started. And I thank you for asking me that question that I didn't have an answer to.
Well, so basically, that's what. So, Erin, should the folks who are here with us today and all across the country listen to the live stream, do they need to start thinking about whether there's an office they might want to run for?
Absolutely. But can I also, yes, run for office. Can I also say something else? When I worked in your office, I noticed that at the other members of Congress in the Minnesota delegation, there were like 5 or 7 black staffers in the entire state, and 3 of them were in your office. And that's a problem, right? It's not just the people who are elected, it's the people who work in those offices too. And so if you don't want to run for office, then work in an office or talk to your representative, your elected official, but it's important that the people behind the scenes too reflect the communities of the people who are representing the communities.
Yeah. So, Peggy, Resistance Summer. Good idea? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to say good idea, especially because I'm sitting right next to you. But I think it's a great idea. And you know, we talk about this all the time, right? We hear from year to year, 2016 is the most important election of our time. It probably was this time around, but every year we hear that, right? And then in the off years, in between congressional elections or state house elections, we don't see anybody, right? And then 2 weeks before the election, people come around in all of our communities and tell us how important we are. And it's like, where you been?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think, we have a real responsibility to give people hope. And the way that we do that is exactly what you said before, which is just listening. Getting in early.
Mm-hmm.
How important is it for us to be knocking doors, doing phone calls, and really engaging people in the year before the midterm election?
I think it's critical because I can get to know someone. I can go to their house, I can have a conversation with them about healthcare or childcare or hunger or education, and then can say, what do you think we should be doing about that? Start to build on that relationship and then come back and say, and now we're gonna turn out to vote. We're gonna do that, we're gonna work towards these things, but then it's not over yet, because we got to govern and we have to implement those policies that we talked about. I think too often the election happens outside of organizing work and policy development. And I think, that's something around Minnesota we call the Wellstone Triangle, right? And those 3 were things working together. I think Resistance Summer is the foundation of doing those things well.
That's right. Now, Fu, how do you go out? What do you do when you go out and you start to approach a door? I mean, what mindset do you have? Maybe you never knocked on the door before, but you're walking up to this brand new door. What should folks know as they approach that door? Because you've done a lot of door knocking up there in North Minneapolis.
So for me, I don't know if you 3 have the same feeling as I do. Even today, before a door knock, I'm really nervous. I do not know what to expect, but, running as a candidate to represent my neighbors, if I'm afraid to go talk to the people in my community, then I shouldn't be doing that at all. So for me, I just prepare for the worst or expect the best or whatever. And, just go up there and knock on the door and then just ask them how they're doing and explain why I'm there. And for me as a candidate or right now as an elected official, just to let them know, just to update them about what's going on over at the Capitol and, ask them and not really tell them what I want to tell them, but listen to them to see what they care about. And oftentimes, even if we disagree on an issue, most of the folks that I talk to at the door really appreciate seeing me as a candidate and now as an elected official being out there and engaging with them, and I think that's the most important thing.
What do you think? Pretty important question, huh? All right, somebody's going to clap for that question. I think it's worth it. And I just want to let everybody know we just got joined by the ranking member of the Veteran Affairs Committee in the House of Representatives, Tim Walz, 1st District Congressman. And while Tim is here, I mean, what about our vets? I mean, vets are an important demographic. What should the commitment be to reach out and listen to our vets, people who put the uniform on to serve this country?
So I actually sit on the Veterans Committee in the Minnesota Legislature, and I have to tell you, there's nothing that ever takes me back more when I realize that these folks know as much as they could know before going overseas or actually even staying here in the country, but they put on that uniform for us, for every single right enshrined into our Constitution to protect and defend that. And when they go abroad and then they come home and it's like, well, and it's tepid, right? We don't have all of the resources available and that is necessary for the well-being, the health, and the continuation of this person and their family who, by the way, stay home and support that person while they're gone. There's nothing more that we could do to show our patriotism to those patriots who put on that uniform than supporting them with all the things that they ask for. And too often, our response to any community who's asking for something is, it's too much money, it's too expensive, it's too hard. And those are the folks that we can never look at and say it's too hard because they already did the hard thing. And they're home now and we gotta do it for them.
That's right, that's right. You know, right after the Civil War in the United States, you know, the vets came back and some of them were looking at running for office, and it was campaign season. And there was a group of candidates looking to get the votes of the voters. And one gentleman walked up and he said, I was a general in the Civil War. I was a leader of men. Look at these epaulets on my shoulders. I commanded legions. I commanded armies. You should vote for me because I know how to lead large numbers of men into battle and fight for glory. And then, you know, the folks clapped politely. And then the next guy come up and he said, I was a private. And if how many of y'all in the group today are generals? And nobody raised their hand. He said, how many of y'all were privates, sergeants, or corporals? And everybody raised their hand. And he said, well, if all of y'all who are generals, you can vote for him, and all the rest of y'all can vote for me. What's the point of my story? Vets are working people. Vets are working people. Vets are folks who are concerned about minimum wage. They're concerned about Medicare. They're concerned about pre-existing condition. They're concerned about being able to afford medication. They're concerned about whether the plant's going to get closed. Who in this room today is a veteran, or has a loved one who is one? Yeah, or a parent or its child or anybody. Well, right, so like nearly everybody raised their hand. And so just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Let me ask you about another group that us Democrats don't talk to nearly enough. Small business people. Now, you know, what do a big international chain like, say, I don't know, McDonald's, what do they have to do with the local burger shop that's owned by a private owner right on the corner? Do they have the same interests? Or are they somewhat at odds?
I think they're somewhat at odds.
Well, I mean, do you think Democrats need to be reaching out to small business people?
Absolutely.
Talk about why.
So I used to be the executive director of Children's Defense Fund, Minnesota. And we did a lot of work on behalf of working families. And part of that was making sure that we were also building relationships with the folks who employ those working families. And what we heard, one of the things that we were working on was access to childcare and making sure that we were funding the child care assistance program to make sure that the small businesses had reliable workforce because families have reliable childcare. But the other thing we talked a lot about was paid family leave, earned sick and safe time. Issues that folks say, you know, I want to be able to provide paid family leave to my employees, but I need a pool to be able to pay into, right? This is a benefit I'd like to offer the people that work for me, but I absolutely, you know, need to work in partnership with other small businesses. And I think that too often is, as you said, a group where we're like, you know, we don't necessarily have a connection there. I disagree. These are folks who are really the foundation, the pillar of our community, and have the expertise, the creativity, who can really bring us good ideas. And when we first started working on the Paid Family Leave Coalition, it was small business owners who were one of the loudest voices for us, who were helping to lead the way and say, this is how I think that this could work for my small business. So if they're not part of the conversation, we are missing out.
What do you guys think? How do Democrats engage small business people, given that most people do work for small business, not really big businesses, and given that so many folks, even working folks who work for someone else, someday would like to start that Start that small business they've been dreaming of. How do we connect to them as a party?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that worker-friendly policies and business-friendly policies are not mutually exclusive. And we keep talking about it as if workers are okay, then businesses aren't. And if businesses are okay, then workers are not. And when we buy into that narrative, then we all of a sudden start legislating into that narrative, and we have to stop doing that. And as Peggy said, these are, small businesses they want to offer things to their workers, their employees, but so often the way that we've set it up, which does benefit big business, right? All of our policies, when we hear these in committee, it's not like the small business owner, they trot that small business owner in to say, like, this is bad for me, but when they come in with their proposal, it's not for that small business owner, it's for that big business. And so they get dragged into that for whatever's good for big business must be good for small business, and I don't think it is. Those are the two that I think are a little bit mutually exclusive.
Well, that's right. Let me tell you, when I used to own a small business, I owned a law firm, and we had employees, we had folks who were paralegals, legal assistants, secretaries, stuff like that. And when they came to me and said, "Look, man, I need a little more money," I was always ready to try to do that or anything, child care, whatever, because when they leave, that is a huge expense to the business. You got to retrain these folks. That's very expensive. So having high road business practices is a very good idea. And so often the small business person, the small hardware shop, they're in competition with Walmart, right? They got more. That small business owner has more in common with the rest of us than the huge multinational. And so we need to make common cause with them, I think. Fu, I know you've been a fan. You've been a friend to the small business community, haven't you?
Definitely within on the north side and in St. Paul, where we're over at the state capitol, we have a lot of immigrant businesses. Yep. And they're coming here to our country, and they do not know or understand the process. But a lot of them, they're reaching out to their elected officials, their city council member, state representatives, state senate, and really seeing what kind of resources we have out there that's available for them. And as elected officials, I think that what we could do as Democrats is we could be that connector for them. If there's a particular person in the community who wants to start a particular business, grocery store, small farmer's market, restaurant, we just need to be there to help connect them to the resource, and I think we do know how to do that.
Yeah. Now, let me just ask you one other question. Now, we are the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. We're proud of that. Do we need to do better by labor?
Yes.
I'm telling you, one of the things that when I was in the Congress and I'm disappointed about is that when we had the House and both houses in the presidency, we did not pass the Employee Free Choice Act. We'd be better off as a nation if we passed that piece of legislation. But what else can we do to be more labor friendly? Since we know that people in unions make more money than people not in unions. And that goes whether if you're a woman, person of color, if the union difference is the difference in your pay and your outcome. And we know that so many sectors that do great things for our people are unionized, such as teachers, nurses, public employees, steel workers, service workers, all kinds of folks. How can we be stronger in our labor community?
Well, I think what you just said, Keith, is a big part of it, right? When we had control of the president and Congress, we didn't do what we needed to do, and I think too often, as Democrats, we're timid. And we say...
Do we need some bold Democrats?
I think we do.
Do we need a few bold Democrats around here?
So, yes. And
Flanagan says yes.
Yes, I say yes. That's a yes for me. And I think part of it is, say, oh, just wait for the next 2 years. Just wait for the next 4 years. But I always think about, the next 2 years or 4 years. I have a 4-year-old kiddo at home, right? And I think about what is 2 years in her development? What is 4 years in her development? It's too long to wait. And I think that's where we lose people. I don't necessarily think that folks always turn out for the people on the other side of the aisle, but they're not necessarily coming out for us. They're staying home. 90
million people who could have voted did not vote in the last election.
Right.
90 million. We lost the election in 3 states by a total of about 77,000. We have got to get our people out. which I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
but-
I'd let you, yes. No, I agree. And I think that it is just being timid or, and so even locally, we're having a conversation about driver's licenses for undocumented people. And we're sort of tiptoeing around this issue.
For me, I think people ought to be able to be licensed to drive if they're going to drive.
Absolutely.
You know, personally, I think that a driver's license should be a document that proves you can safely operate a motor vehicle.
Right. I want
That's
you to
what
have
it should
insurance.
be for. Yeah,
Right?
I mean, that's right. That's right. So, hey, you guys, let's go back to this issue of organizing. We talked about small business. We talked about new American communities, and we talked about the license issue. We talked about veterans, and we talked about labor and small business. The one thing we've got to do is we've got to get out there and organize, and all of you guys are organizers. How was it important for you in your election to be an on-the-ground organizer? I happen to know you guys did not get a bunch of money and spend it on TV ads. I happen to know you're not TV ad politicians. You're on-the-ground relationship building public servants. How important was organizing in your own race?
It was the thing. So, 3 years ago today, I was like a scrappy 27-year-old working in Target for $13.75 an hour. And today I'm a legislator, and it's because of organizing. It's because, yes, you can clap. You should clap for organizing. And when I was still working for Keith, and I would bring my knocking shoes with me, and I would bring my turf with me, and I would leave work and drive 45 minutes home to knock and have those face-to-face conversations. And in addition to having those conversations, face-to-face, values-based conversations, why they're important, it's not just for the win, but it's so that you are accurately reflecting the values of your community. That's why we have the conversations, not to win. Win is not the end, it's the beginning. We have to reflect our community, and that's why we keep doing it. I started door knocking last week. So we have to keep having those conversations so that we are continuing to be true representatives of our community, not just saying we are.
That's right. Fu, I happen to know you were on the doors a lot because I was there with you a few times. How key was it for you to be on the doors for your own election?
So for my election, door knocking and getting out there and on the phones, that was probably the most important thing for me. Where I was running, this is why I love the Democratic Party. I ran in the primary against a Democratic incumbent, but at the end of the day, the most important thing was getting out there to talk to my neighbors to see what are some of the concerns that they have in our community, and at the end of the day, getting out there every single day from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. on the weekdays, and on the weekends, trying to take it a little bit lighter from 10 to 8. And I had to do this the whole summer, and I took a leave of absence from my job with the Office of the Secretary of State and did this full time. And I wouldn't be here today in front of you all if I slacked off just even a little bit, because for us, voter turnout, I gotta be honest, voter turnout in my district wasn't the highest, but we were able to increase voter turnout by 5%.
I'm so proud of you for that.
And we are planning to increase that even more this time around too.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're setting goals. Now, what about it? What about Peg? You and I knocked a few doors over there in St. Louis Park.
We did.
Yeah.
It's fun to knock doors with Congressman Ellison because people are like, wait, what are you doing at my house? It's great. And I was like, hey, I'm here too. I'm also running. But the first time when I ran for the school board back in the day, there were a lot of people who gave me a lot of advice about, don't bother those people, don't vote. Right? And I was like, so
put a finer point on that.
Sure. So those people meant people of color, indigenous folks on the north side, folks in Phillips. And I'm like, listen, I am those people, right? And so if I don't knock in my own communities or talk to the people who are directly affected or most affected by the policies being passed by the board, then I'm not doing my job, right? And so that's part of it. The second time when I ran for state rep, I didn't have an opponent. The first time around, I recommend that everyone should do that once.
That's a great way to get elected.
It's good. But it also made me remember, right, what Paul Wellstone used to always say, like, always run like you're like 10 points behind.
That's right.
And so folks are like, if you're unopposed, what are you doing at my house? And I'm like, listen, if I'm going to represent you, I need to know what you think.
That's the spirit.
And in particular, when you and I, right, we knocked on some doors in apartment buildings, and I even hear about that, right? The folks are like, why the turnover's so high there? People move all the time. And I was like, listen, I grew up in St. Louis Park. I grew up in an apartment building in St. Louis Park, and nobody ever knocked on our door. And when I think about my job is to make sure that those single moms in particular, raising those kiddos in the apartment who are working super hard, got those kids with the different colored lunch tickets like I did, have a voice at the table. And I can't do that unless I'm in relationship with those folks.
That's right. It's about relationship.
Keith, I just wanted to add on to that real quickly, too. Today, I met one of our city council candidate at an event in North Minneapolis, and he came up to me and he said, "Food, thank you." I went to a family, and what they told me was that before this past election cycle, no one knocked on my door until Food did, and now
Give
he's
him a
in
hand.
office. Now he's on office, and I think that the work that we're doing right now, or we have done in the past, we're paving the way for other candidates. Other candidates that look like us too, and that's why it's really important for us to get out there and just knock on every doors that we can.
That's right. Now, just remember, this live stream, it's in Minnesota, but it's all over America and even the world. You know that. And so we got folks who are asking questions from across the globe. And just to let you know, when we first started Democrats Live, which is what this program is a part of, Tom Perez and I, who's our chair of the DNC, did it together. And Tom said, hey, I hope a few folks might call in and ask questions. We might, how many, do we get a few questions? And Eddie G and Adriana, who's a young lady who works with him, says, we got 10,000 questions. So folks are excited to hear. The idea of this Democrats live stream and this thing that we do every single week, we want to encourage you to tune in, is to engage at the grassroots level. We want to knock the doors and be right up there and have a close personal relationship, but we can do it through the airwaves. We can use it through the magic of technology. That's important. So that's why I want to tell you that Rosanna from Massachusetts, get us here from Massachusetts. They're good too. We love our Massachusetts folks. What is the most effective and impactful thing we can do to take down the GOP and the Trump administration? That's her question.
Vote.
Well, hey, I just read them as they're there.
Okay, so vote. But I want to asterisk that and say a little bit more. So in Minnesota, we have the VAN, the Voter Activation Network, and that's the database that we have all of our data in. And one of the most common things that I used to hear before I was organizing with Keith was, if it didn't happen in the VAN, it didn't happen. If they're not in the VAN, they don't exist. Well, think about the folks that are not in the VAN, right? The folks that aren't registered to vote because they just turned 18. Folks that aren't registered to vote because they're on parole. Folks who aren't registered to vote because they can't read the actual form to fill it out and send it in. And so,
or because they just became citizens.
Just because, exactly. And so when I say vote, I mean that we have to expand our electorate. We have to talk to the people who have been disenfranchised from our system for so long that they don't feel like it's worth it anymore. And so when I say vote, I mean that we, those of us who do feel empowered to vote, have to start talking to the folks who don't, so that they know how important it is and they join us in those polls.
That's so key. Thank you. Thank you. So here's another one. Connie from Idaho. Let's hear it for Idaho, everybody. Idaho's in the house. By the way, I was very honored to speak at the Idaho dinner, the Morris Day dinner, in honor of their Senator Morris, who was one of the first people to vote against the Gulf of Tonkin, by the way. Boy, they had a capacity crowd. The place was packed out, and I don't think they had a dinner bigger than that yet. People all over this country are excited, including our great state of Idaho. So here's a question from Connie. We here in Idaho, and we feel abandoned by the Democratic Party. We want to be relevant. We want our vote to be heard. We want to participate more and not be thought of as hopeless. How can the party help? What do you guys think? What's your take?
Well, I think, Connie, good for you for asking that question. And I think with rural states, there is an opportunity for folks to just take the lead. I think so often people don't know that if you show up to your precinct caucus, you sign up to be a precinct chair, there's a lot of opportunity if you start to learn how the rules work. I think locally, we're seeing people start to use the systems that are in place to build power. And so part of that is building the relationships, with folks who are currently in those positions, party leadership, and then also pushing back, challenging some of those folks, knocking even just in your neighborhood, around your community and your block, registering folks to vote. Now you have a crew of people who can, have this foundation that you can start to build on within your own community. And I think that in some ways, I think, Keith, that's what I watch you do all the time, which is to bring people who don't necessarily see themselves like, I'm not part of this party, or I'm not part of this, this organization. But you're like, listen, there's a path here. I'm opening the door for you. I am holding it open. There's a space for you here. And I think too often we don't do that.
We got to do it. And we got to do it for women, communities of color, LGBT community, but we also got to do it for our rural communities. And we got to do it for our rural communities. Because let me tell you, rural communities all over this country, there's only about 285,000 people who make all the food that we eat domestically. We should thank them. We should thank them for that. Rural communities supply a disproportionate number of people who serve in our nation's military. Rural communities, here's another thing, just about everybody in this room, either their parents or grandparents or they themselves come from rural communities. I know I do. And so, we've got to remember how critical it is. We've got to make investments in Idaho and all over the country, broadband, fiber optic cables. Everybody ought to be able to get online everywhere in America, inner city, rural communities. You got to understand how tough it is to get to the doctor if you live in a rural community. You got to understand how tough it is to, spatially being spatially disadvantaged means that, the nearest hospital is 13 miles away. And try that in a South Dakota snowstorm. So this is critical, and I just want to say thanks to Connie for raising this. The truth is the DNC, and I'm the deputy chair of the DNC, Tom and I will tell you that historically we have spent a lot of time in battleground states. Blue states, we haven't spent that much time or energy in the blue states. You know that's true. And we haven't spent that much time or energy in the red ones either. We spent our time in the 15 battleground states, but now we got to spend time, money, resources, energy, creativity in all states, all counties.
And let me say one more thing about the rural vote. Indian country is everywhere, right? Majority of Native folks live in the urban core, but we also, live in all over the country in places where we can swing an election in a red state.
That's right.
If people show up, spend that money. I've had folks say we just don't go there, we mail. But I have watched what a difference it makes if I can fundraise and pay for gas cards for volunteers to drive a mile between people's houses, sometimes two, to knock on their door or honk the horn when dogs come running towards the car, for someone to come outside and say, what are you doing here? It's like, I want to talk to you about this upcoming election and what you care about and what's at stake. And so I think, too often we're writing that off instead of saying we can be really intentional and strategic. It just takes, we can't do it 2 weeks before the election.
Nope, you got to build that relationship
early.
Early. And on this issue of native vote, states like Montana, Idaho, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, and many, many others, because like you said, everywhere is Indian country. But what's that? Oklahoma. Those votes are critical to winning for everybody. And let me just tell you, it's important to the white, the black, the brown, the Asian Pacific Islander that we have a strong native vote. Because if we can flip some of these states, then everybody's going to be better off. We can protect healthcare. If we can't flip these states, everybody loses it. So this is why we all got to be in for each other, because because we now live in a day when you shave off 1% of the electorate, 1.5% of the electorate, that could win the whole thing. That could win the whole state. So we can't cede any county, any community. We're fighting everywhere all the time. Let me ask this question. The DNC is being outspent by Paul Ryan and the GOP Koch brothers in the current special elections by millions of dollars. How do you plan to address this major fundraising discrepancy in the 2018 midterms and long-term and long-term support ending Citizens United? You guys want to take that one? Well, you know what? I'm in Congress, so I better take that one. Well, let me just say to you guys, I know people hate it when they get fundraising appeals, but let me tell you, we can go to 3 or 4 billionaires to ask us to fund our party, or we can get your $3 and $4 and $20. Which one do you prefer? The second one I think is better. You know why? Because whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And if you pay for your piper, and Bernie Sanders proved you can run a very well-financed presidential campaign, $27 a time. But you got to have a message that people believe in and connect to. And you got to have a party that's fighting for you all the time. That said, let me say this. It's not all about the money. I don't want to let you think it's not about the money at all, because it is. But it's not only about the money. We can make up for whatever discrepancies we have by having massive turnout and active volunteer engagement all over the country. We can make it up. Still today, as of June 3rd, 2017, you do not have to pay to vote, right? You know, that's still true. Now, you might have to pay for an ID in 22 states in our union, and that's wrong, you know, to vote. But as of today, you can still vote, and you do not have to plunk it down. There's no poll tax. They're unconstitutional. That's the 24th Amendment. We have got to maximize this vote, and we have to do grassroots fundraising, low-dollar fundraising, so that we can fund the expenses that this party needs to pay for. You want to say anything about that?
And the only other thing I would say is I love that the question, and it's April from New York.
Thank you.
Yeah, that these are special elections. These special elections are happening because these people were plucked out of very, very, very red states to be staff members and administrators in the administration, which means that the GOP is spending tens of millions of dollars to protect a seat that is suddenly in danger because of their own administration. And so don't pretend like it's not because of our power that they are spending so much money.
Let me tell you, we came very close in Kansas. We weren't supposed to be in the game at all. Our candidate, John Ossoff, actually won the first round in Georgia, and he's up in Georgia 6 by 1 point. And if we help out, we might pull it off. June 20th, everybody. We lost that Montana race by a little bit, but we fought it, and we were fighting, and we were in it. And we know that, and we're actually surprisingly in the South Carolina seat that's open right now. So don't count us out. We can do this thing. We need volunteers. We need energy. And if you know somebody in South Carolina or Georgia and they're not voting in these upcoming specials, you call them and you get them out to vote, because we need everybody. Let me just ask you this. Edward from Alaska, and they got some fighting Democrats in Alaska. Let me tell you, y'all, they do. How will the results of Resistance Summer be measured? I think that's mine too. Well, first of all, we're going to count. We're going to have regular calls where we say how many new registrations, how many doors, how many calls, how many tabling opportunities, we're going to count. But at the end of the day, we're also going to count the stories. Remember I said that before? These stories are really, really important, because it is emotion that drives choice, folks. I wish it was logic, but we're not Spock from Star Trek. We're human beings. And much of what drives us is how we feel about something. And that is why we're going to collect those stories, and we're going to share stories of people who have gotten involved for the first time, people who have maybe voted for the first time, people who have gotten involved in door knocked for the first time. That's why I asked Fu about that. So I think this is critically important and and we are going to measure. But remember, if you're going to have a Labor Day cookout, and we urge you to do so all over the nation, make sure you book that space now so that you can invite our labor friends, celebrate the people of the workers of this country, and we can use it as a capstone for the Resistance Summer and spin us into the next thing we got planned for this fall, because we're not stopping, right? Right? So let's do a role play. Y'all cool for some role play? Let's do a little role play. I'm going to be Citizen Keith. Which one of you three guys wants to be the candidate?
I volunteer Peggy as tribute.
Okay.
I accept.
Okay, so I'm gonna be at home,
Okay.
right here, and I'm I'm washing dishes. Okay. Somebody do the ding dong on the bell.
Ding dong.
Yeah, who is that at my door? Let me see. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Oh, I'm just, washing dishes and stuff.
Oh, awesome. Well, my name's Peggy Flanagan.
Pleased to meet you. I heard about you.
Oh, that's great. I'm
Are
your
you,
state representative.
Oh, I thought you were my dog catcher. I thought you.
I'm a fan of dogs.
Oh,
I like
yeah,
dogs.
yeah. Did your daughter go to swimming lessons at the?
She did.
Yeah, my nephew did too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what can I do for you?
Well, I'm just here because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in our community.
And
in particular, what's happening. Well, you were talking about your nephew. What's happening with our young people?
Sure. Yeah,
And that
big deal.
I don't know about you, but I have, as you know, I have my 4-year-old little girl. And
Cute kid. I saw her.
Thank you.
She's a bundle.
Thank you. And childcare has been a really difficult issue for our family and for a lot of the other families that I've talked to. Is that something that has, lack of childcare or accessibility or affordability, is that something that has affected your life at all?
Well, it just costs so much. That's our problem.
Right?
I mean, I
Absolutely.
feel like I got a job so I can send my kid to childcare so I can. I don't know. It just seemed like I'm working to pay for childcare, and that's all we do.
That's absolutely right.
I've even thought about just staying home because it's almost a wash.
Because you can't make it. I know that for me, I know when my daughter starts kindergarten, that's going to be the biggest raise that I get in my life, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's lots of things that we can do to try to make childcare more affordable and accessible. And part of that is, helping more entrepreneurs open childcare co-ops.
I was thinking about doing that.
You really?
It's costing me an arm and a leg. It must be a good business to be in.
Well, I think
Right.
it's a little difficult for folks sometimes to make it as the capital to start that up, and so if you're able to work in partnership with other folks, that can make it more viable opportunity for people. So that's one of the things that I'm working on right now in the legislature. And for folks who are having a hard time affording childcare overall, it's making sure that we fund the child care assistance program, because there's a lot of folks who are working, and I'm sure you know people who are patching things together.
Well, like
right,
me,
and
right?
figuring
I
it
mean,
out.
I make $9.50 an hour,
Yeah.
and I got a partner who makes about the same, and we both got 2 jobs, and then we got to pay for the child care.
I mean, it's really difficult.
Yeah,
And
and-
I know that, and I feel that. And so, I want to talk with you more about, what it is that we can do. I think we've got a couple of solutions, but your story in particular is really important.
But I'm not really into politics.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah,
I
so
hear
I mean,
that.
I don't really know, I'm just not into politics, so.
So I understand. And part of the reason that I decided to do this in the first place, because I was sick of the people who are making decisions for my family.
I know.
Right?
What's up with these people? That Trump guy, oh my God.
Right. No. And so that's why I decided to do this. I grew up in a family with a single mom who worked really hard.
Yeah.
A lot of the programs that I just talked about were programs that helped to lift my family out of poverty.
Like Head Start?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
That's a good
That's
program.
Right. That's absolutely right. And so there's a lot of people over at the Capitol who haven't had experiences like
Yeah,
you and me.
But they ain't gonna listen to me.
Well, you'd be surprised.
I would be surprised.
No, that's right. That's right. But here's the deal. I'm here today, and I'm listening to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I
So-
appreciate that. But what about the rest? You can't do it alone.
I can't do it alone.
What
I can't do
about
it
the rest
alone.
of them?
So, part of it is building relationships. We need to get new folks in there who
Me and
are
you was
like
cool.
us.
We're cool.
Yeah, we're cool.
So, but
we
like,
need more
let's
people.
just say I want to do something about this child care thing. I mean, I don't even know where to start.
So the first thing that you could do is just be willing to share your story about your experience, what's happening with your partner, and how we can make sure that that story is being told. I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of people who make assumptions.
Who would I tell the
about
story
working
to? I mean, I
families.
tell it to my partner, but he's like, yeah, I know.
She's like, I live here, right?
Right.
Totally. Well, you can tell it to me,
Okay.
right? And if you would
But
ever
is there
be
like any groups I could maybe?
yeah, there are, and I'm so glad that you asked that question. There is the Kids Can't Wait Coalition.
Okay.
And so that is a coalition of organizations, but also just families who are directly affected by the lack of access to quality, affordable childcare. I'd be happy to connect y'all if I could get your name and number, and
Okay.
I'd have them follow up with you.
Well, what about this Democratic Party thing? You think I should go on down there and volunteer?
So here's the deal. I really like talking to people. As you can tell, I'm at your house.
Yeah.
Sounds like you kind of like talking to people too, because
I'm
you
a-
spent
they-
some time here.
I've been, known to chat a little bit.
Yep. You may also just be avoiding doing the dishes, but no judgment from me. I hear that. And so there's a great opportunity to come on down to the Democratic Party. If you don't like talking to people, you can stuff envelopes, you can direct traffic. But let me tell you, I really enjoy talking to people about the things that we care about, what we value, right? Making sure that our kids have everything that they need, making sure that, it's safe for our kids to go outside, that people, that my mom who's on, Medicaid can afford her medications, right? And so, I don't know, I kind of like hanging out with like-minded people
There you
who
go.
are fun. and
So, do you want to be in touch with me or anything?
I do.
Why
And
do you,
so
what is that clipboard you
I'm
have
so
for?
glad that you asked. So if I could just get your email address and your phone number, make sure that what I've got here.
0000000.
Y'all thought Keith Ellison was going to give you his cell phone number, didn't you? Well, thank you so much, Keith, and
Well,
I'm going to follow up
yes,
with you.
good to
I
see
really
you.
enjoyed
Okay,
chatting
we'll be
with
in
you.
touch. Thanks
okay,
a lot.
Take
All
good
right.
care.
Peggy Flanagan, everybody. So let me just tell everybody, remind everyone, we need you to get your phones out and text RESIST to 433-6767. Text,
433
text,
resist
text
resist
to 433-67. What is that? 433-67. That's right. Do it now. And I want you to know that today you have been working with people all over this country. Probably most are Democrats, but you don't have to be. You can be an independent. You can be green. You can be no party affiliation at all. We want you, if what you want is to have a country where people can go to the doctor, where we can have environmental protection, where the president is not suspected of collaborating with a foreign power to undermine an American
Yes.
election. If you think these things are important, it is time to get involved with your neighbors. If you're not at a house party right now, I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to hang with some awesome people, because we've been having an awesome time here. Is that right, guys? But we still need your help. We need to text resist, again, resist to 43367, and we're going to stay in touch with you so you can stay involved with Resistance Summer. And now I got two things I want to ask everybody. First of all, if you are hosting a house party right now, I have two things I want to ask of you. One, plan for a National Day of Canvassing next Saturday. Today's Saturday, right? Next Saturday is June 10th, right? So on June 10th, we want you to plan for a National Day of Canvassing at Saturday. You can do it in the morning. You can do it in the afternoon. You can do it anytime you want. But on June 10th, we want you to have a National Day of Canvassing, and we got 50 states and 100 events, and we expect to have at least that canvassing next week. What is canvassing? Just what Peggy was doing to me a moment ago. And so we're going to need you to make a plan. Are you going to show up at your local grocery store and go out? Are you going to have friends at a house and send them out? Are you going to contact your state party to get some walk lists? And we want you to set some goals. If you say we're going to talk to at least 100 people, talk to 100 people. We're going to knock 300 doors. We're going to knock 300 doors. But get out there and do it. Organize your friends, your church group, your synagogue group, your mosque group, your yoga group, whatever group you're in, your veterans group, whatever group you're in, get them together. And then get people's contact information. You notice how Peggy got my number, right? Get the email, get the Twitter, get all that information, collect it. We need it. You're going to be talking about the issues that are important to you and why you're a Democrat. And remember, the most important thing to do is to listen. And so you're going to share a little bit, but then you're going to listen a lot more. Write down even anecdotal information, what people's concerns are. Childcare, for example. Ask them, what are your issues? One of the goals of June 10th is to build out hundreds of volunteer leaders across the country to work with local Democratic parties and to lay the groundwork. We need to win big in 2017 because, there's a lot of municipal races going on in 2017 and some specials. And New Jersey and Virginia got governor's races this year. And then, of course, 2018. If we build in 2017, we're going to have a big 2018. But we got to build. We can't just hope that people get totally disgusted with you-know-who, right? Now, we're finalizing the details right now, but everyone who signed up to take action will be receiving an online toolkit with scripts and commit cards, and it'll be everything you need for June 10th. So you do that resist, and you call into our number, which is resist 43367. You're going to get that information you need. And then send the info you're going to collect to resistance@dnc.org. Send the information you're going to collect to resistance@dnc.org. Okay, so here's the second thing. Number 2, be ready for your state party to reach out to you. We're trying to build our state parties. Idaho, Alaska, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, right? And we're trying to make our state parties stronger, better, and everything. And tonight we got our Humphrey Mondale dinner. Is that right? Is that right? Is that right? Come on now. But they've been having gala dinners all over the country. I've spoken at least 11 or 12 of them, and they've all been on jam, and everybody's been excited. I was in Maine just last weekend, let me tell y'all. And we want people to stay active and be an integral part of Resistance Summer. And if you don't hear from them, then get on Facebook and then search them out. But they're supposed to be reaching out to you. But let me tell you, don't wait and say, well, they didn't call me, so. No, that's like saying I didn't do my homework because I didn't have a pencil. You call them and say, you're supposed to be reaching out to me, aren't you? But be aggressive because, a lot of times we haven't used some of these muscles, particularly in the non-presidential year. So we're going to use them this time, right? So each state is unique, and different states are going to have different strategies. So that's why it's so important that everyone is working in tandem and working with local and state parties. What we're trying to do, y'all, is new. We've never had what they call an off-year engagement like this. But, all over this country, people feel that it is the right thing to do. If you have gone to the Women's March, who went to the Women's March? Anybody? There you go. If you went to the Science March, the Tax March, the March for Truth, which took place today. If you've been going to these marches, let me just tell you one thing. Demonstration without legislation ends in frustration. You've got to take your demonstration energy and convert it into the ballot box. We got to win elections. And that is how we're going to not just resist this guy, but to actually advance our dreams, actually make the country the one that we would dream it could be. Equality, fairness, liberty, and justice for all. That's right. That's what we're fighting for, and that's what we believe in. So the fact of the matter is, this is bigger than party. In fact, I believe the Democratic Party is not really just for Democrats. It's for, actually, the American people. We are an advocacy organization that coalesces around certain values that is here to benefit everyone. If we believe that we ought to have a fair economy and everybody ought to be able to do well in it, no matter who you are or where you look like or where you come from or who you live with or no matter that stuff. And then no matter who you are, you ought to be able to be respected. If you're a senior, you should be respected. If you are a rural person, you should be respected. If you're a vet, you should be respected. If you're a person of color, you should be respected. If you're an immigrant, you should be respected. All of us deserve respect and equal treatment. Isn't that right? So, and then we all need to live on this one planet that we have, and we need to also respect our environment as well. So I just want to say to you guys, you have been more than wonderful, okay? Give it up for Representative Fooley. Give it up for Erin, Maye, Quade. And let's hear it for Peggy Flanagan. My name is Keith Ellison. I'm your host of Democrats Live, and I am telling you, Resistance Summer is already hot and it's popping, and you guys are making it that way. Big hand to you who have been an excellent studio audience. Give yourselves a hand. And we'll see you next week on Democrats Live.